In this video, I discuss exactly where I think cryptocurrencies will go in the next couple of months. We're going to compare to 2020 and I'm going to show you some patterns that I've seen. We're also going to discuss some smaller coins, especially those that in the current cycle, when it comes to AI, I think could do really well. We're going to talk about the markets as well and inflation data, the best ROI on your investments, and also where news comes into this, when it comes to discussing whether we've got a potential market bottom already. So we've got Bitcoin at the moment back above 21,000, and we've got a lot of the altcoins, as I mentioned in my last video, also doing quite well. Now, there's something to consider here. And the first thing to consider is this argument of whether we've actually got a market bottom or if this is just a larger correction that's actually taking place. And I'll discuss why it matters in just a minute. First of all, what do you get typically when a market bottoms in terms of news? We heard earlier today, crypto lender Genesis files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Now, traditionally, as you would have seen in the past few months in crypto, news like this would be very, very bearish. But what happens is, let me just zoom out a little bit to give you a kind of idea. So if we take the peak of Bitcoin, which was November 2021, what happens in these cycles, I won't say it's predictable in terms of price or anything, but in terms of action, mass psychology, it does become quite predictable. What happens is the price of Bitcoin goes down, and it goes down sharply as we saw here. That's normal in cryptocurrency. It's a very volatile market. What happens is you get ongoing bullish news and people think that there's still going to be a further rally, and then eventually the bullish news just doesn't take effect. The market just doesn't care anymore. More bullish news, nobody cares anymore, until the sentiment flips, as it did kind of midway last year, where everybody's just now insanely bearish, and every new news article that comes causes a tank in the price, and that continues for a period of time. And that's when we got the FTX news as well, and then the kind of aftermath of that and all the problems with the crypto exchanges and all of this unbelievable revelations that people for some reason weren't aware of in terms of how crypto exchanges worked. I mean, this is nothing new. Some of you may have heard of Quadriga CX and the problems they had a few years ago in the last bull market. So this is nothing new for those of you who are quite experienced when it comes to crypto trading. Anyway, after that, what happens? We get to this point where price has crashed significantly and there's still bearish news all the time in crypto, but it doesn't matter anymore. The market just does not care anymore. It soaks it up, and in fact actually goes the opposite way. So this news is almost, the market almost flips it as a positive. Oh, that means, everything with Genesis and stuff is slowly getting resolved. Market just doesn't care. And that can happen for a massive change in the market. So let's say we start a massive bull market, or even if it's like a kind of bullish correction, let's say we get back to 40,000 in Bitcoin, you're still going to see the same kind of bottoming signs. And that's what we've been seeing recently. So that's really encouraging in my opinion. And what are we seeing in terms of inflation? Every single data point now, it's spun anyway as a positive, even though we know in reality it's not really. Inflation's kind of baked in. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. But anyway, all of the headlines, all of the spin is going to be inflation's turned a corner, as you're seeing here. And slowly, nobody cares about the recession anymore. And that's the way we're going. And the thing is, once a trend gets steam and gets going, it's kind of hard to break. Let me show you a good example. One thing we've learned from the dollar as well, this is the Dixies, this is a dollar index. It was very, very hard to break this trend. So going back all the way since early January 2021, where it was at 89, a very, very strong trend. Many people thought it would reverse. It just never wanted to reverse. And now we're on the way back down and it's doing the exact opposite. It just doesn't want to have any kind of significant correction. Again, this is all very bullish for cryptocurrency. And the reason it's bullish is the prevailing trend now is down. It's very strong. So even if it creeps back up, it's probably going to be a correction rather than a complete U-turn, because these trends tend to last longer than just a few months. As you've seen, this one lasted pretty much nearly 2 years. And the other point I would make is when we're looking at the altcoins, and we're going to look at a few others, but let's just take Sand USD, for example. These are down a lot. And this is why people say cryptocurrency is very, very risky, very volatile for obvious reasons. So off the absolute peak, we were down pretty much 96%. And I would turn to you and say, look, we're down 96%. How far down do you want it to go before you're going to call it a bottom? 97%, 98%. Does that extra amount matter? So let me show you a really good example here of why you shouldn't try and pick bottoms. So let's go back to all of the issues we had with FTX and the other kind of FUD there around the time, which was October 2022. And a few people were buying here, and I started buying here a little bit, just seeing whether this would be the actual turn. And then I quickly sold because it was looking very corrective to me. But even if I had held, This is the thing. Even if I've held there, we're pretty much back where we started, because you're buying such an asset at such a depreciated price. Even down here is already kind of like 90% or so down, that if you're willing to hold for at least a small period of time, it actually doesn't matter too much. We were always going to get back to this resistance. What we do after that, we'll have to wait and see. But that's my point. So even from here, if we get a bit of a bigger correction, which I don't feel that's going to happen, but if we did do, it's not really that much of a problem now, given where we are in the overall trend. And the other thing that's interesting, especially with Bitcoin, is if you compare it, and I mentioned this in the last video, we saw a massive rally back at the end of December 2020, the beginning of 2021. And we're starting to see a very similar pattern here. And this is on a daily chart. And just note the way price actually moved here. Note that one thing I've noticed about the crypto market, on very quiet days like holiday days, Christmas, New Year, stuff like that, that's when you tend to see a lot of accumulation going on. And it seems the same thing happened this time round. The actual market turned on the 31st of December when nobody's actually kind of paying attention to it. And then a week later, suddenly, everything's up like 20, 30% and we're off to the races. But here, notice that as we were moving up, we got one significant correction here, and this is in Bitcoin. But otherwise, not that many significant corrections, especially in the altcoins. So if you look at Mana USD, for example, and this is the beginning of January 2021, you can see the early parts of the move. We had one significant correction after a 5-way move, and then is pretty much in a straight line. And you have to be careful here in the opposite direction. You have to be careful not to miss things like this, because this is the problem with cryptocurrency. The whole move can last such a short period of time. Again, always look left in the chart. So let me show you a really good example of that. So this range here, which was October 21 all the way up to end of November 21. So literally a period of less than a month. But what was the price move there? Talking 700%. And this is how markets move. They spend most of the time consolidating sideways in small trends, but smaller periods of time actually trending. And you have to be ready for those trending periods. And the other tip I have for you is within cryptocurrency, you get so many different types of coins and altcoins. And it's important to have a look and see what the current trend is with coins at that particular point in time. For example, when we had the NFT boom, you had a lot of coins related to the metaverse, for example. Those did really well. And right now, obviously, AI is very much in vogue. Now, these are AI cryptos. The one I'm personally involved in is Fetch. And these are all ones that you can potentially research. I'll leave the link down below in the description. And personally, Fetch, I did a little bit of research about the company, but the main research I do is technical. If you have a look at FET/USD here, you'll see the move here off the lows is very, very bullish. And that's what you like to see if you're seeing a new trend forming. Even if it's a longer term correction, if it starts off as a very, very strong impulse, what does that mean? That means the probability is a bit more in your favor that even after a correction, there'll be more upside to come. So regardless, you'll make some sort of flip on your investment. Now, this is obviously not 100% guaranteed. It's just more probable than the less likely scenario that it will just suddenly turn and dump all the way to the lows, which obviously is still possible. It's just, in my opinion, less likely. So the kind of moves I see happening that I've seen before in crypto many times, just judging by the kind of impulsivity here of the move. So let's again use one of the altcoins as an example, like Mana, and let's go to a smaller time frame, like 4 hours. And I just show you that that was 30th of December, 31st of December. Use your very quiet time of the market. That's where accumulation occurs. I certainly didn't get in at that price, and whoever did has already done really well. But anyway, what happens here is you tend to get shallower corrections. That's what I'm watching out for. So you could argue that this is one full impulse complete. And usually when an impulse completes, you usually expect, especially for a wave 2, it tends to be a deeper correction, like something that comes back. So Mana might come back to 0.46 but 0.52. But I'm not personally interested in that, because I know when crypto gets moving that sometimes you can get very, very shallow corrections, especially initially, and then you get a bigger correction a little bit later. So I actually think that there's a probability as well that in the next 2-3 weeks, we might just continue to rally really, really hard. I can't kind of guess any massive major news that could be very, very negative that would slow this down. And like I said, the market's kind of not caring anymore about this type of news. So you have to be aware of that. This is all sentiment. This is all psychology. I mean, you can look at the fundamentals and say, look, certain coins, for example, Bitcoin, over a period of time, you've got obviously the halving and stuff as well. And people lose Bitcoin all the time. So you get more and more lost coins over the years, and it's supply and demand. Eventually that will really help. Like, I'm sure that all matters too. But more important than anything else is sentiment. And the one I'm least interested in, ironically, is Bitcoin, because you don't get the ROI. So that's the other interesting thing. So let's say Bitcoin did rally from it, it's at resistance, and let's say it has a bit of a kickback and then actually pushes forward. And it only goes up to 25K. So nothing major, just 25K. Well, then if you'd invested right now, you'd get 19%, 20%. Which is a nice return. If you invest $1,000, you'll get back $200. That's nice. However, in that same time, if Bitcoin's going to 25, this is just how it works. What that means is something like Mana or Sand, very likely from here, could easily double, because you're going back to the previous resistance, right? That's what I was showing you there on the Bitcoin chart. So if you go back to a daily chart, the significant resistance, well, there's a couple of places you can mark it, but definitely here are 113. So even up to 113, what are we talking here? We're talking another 77%. So on 1,000 invested, that's 770 back. This is obviously hypothetical, but that's possible. Or to the next resistance of around 172, around that point. So if there was a very, very good rally, that's what would happen. So what are the three scenarios in my opinion? One is that we bottomed already. That's the best, most bullish scenario. That's where you just don't have to do anything. Just hold crypto all year and enjoy yourself. That's one scenario. Now, what percent probability shall I put on this? For me, that's increasing. For me, a couple of weeks ago, it was possible, but I was mainly just trading the correction, always knowing that if the bullish option was there, things would go really well. But basically, I think that's increased to maybe a 40% chance. And I think you've got about, I'd say, a 40 to 50% chance, let's call it 40, of this is a bigger correction. So this goes all the way back up to either 25 or 40, let's say in Bitcoin, something like that. So we get some significant correction, and that's when all hell breaks loose, because people actually realize inflation's not coming down, unemployment's still ridiculously low, all the usual markers, and we get this kind of double peak inflation, blah, blah, blah. So the Fed's obviously going to be extremely nervous and is going to go crazy ramping up interest rates. In that case, then all of this has to come down. That's the only thing that could potentially happen. And then that was a false bottom, and then we're going to get a further bottom here. But remember, even then, you could have traded your way up. You'll be in good profit. It doesn't matter. Happy days. So either of these are good. If you're investing kind of right now or you invested recently. But then the 20% chance is we're going to turn back within the next week, and it will need to happen very soon. If this was not the right place where we had a bottom, or it's not a bigger correction, it'll need to turn back very soon, and then we go back down to like 12,000 or something. And potentially it could get a lot worse than that as well. All of the markets would turn, because like I've said a couple of videos ago, everything is correlated. That's just the way the world works now. Literally, the Fed is controlling how your crypto portfolio will perform this year. End of story. And there's like just not even a debate about it. Whether they do quantitative easing, if you want to call it that, quantitative tightening, which is just money printer on and off, in simple terms, obviously. Whatever they do here, that's what dictates what's going to happen with cryptocurrency, because that's where all excess kind of money flows. And people who've been involved in crypto for a while now, they've gone through a few cycles, including myself. So you're kind of expecting there to be another cycle. Why would there not be another bull cycle? And if there is, and we're already down 95% in a lot of the coins, what else needs to happen? And that goes back to my personal theory when it comes to markets, which timing is everything. Some of the greatest investors, some of the greatest VC investors in companies, it was all timing was much more important than some of the analysis they were doing. Again, this is just in my opinion, because if you get the timing right, you get outsized returns. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and I'll see you with another crypto update very soon. Thanks for listening.